The Zowie XL2586X is Zowie's latest and greatest 540Hz gaming monitor. It's pure-blooded esports phenomenalness, but it's also really expensive. So let's answer the question of who's it for and is it worth it, starting off with its performance in esports gaming, which is the main focus. Is it an improvement over a 360Hz XL2566K? The answer is yes. Whereas 360 from 240 is like a slight jump, 360 to 540 almost feels like it breaks the uncanny barrier. It almost feels like it breaks the uncanny barrier. 540Hz is phenomenally smooth. It significantly reduces eye strain. It really makes it a lot easier to be immersed. It also makes it a lot easier to track fast moving objects and look at things popping up on your screen. And frankly, if this was affordable and everyone could have it, I would give it out to everyone. It is absolutely an amazing experience to have 540Hz. Will it give you a competitive advantage? Well, if you had two clones fighting each other, the answer is yes. Will it make you a better player? Obviously, probably not. You really have to be really good to actually take advantage of the competitive advantage 540Hz actually gives you. But the thing about 540Hz is that it does make you play a little bit more consistent, and it also does change your mindset a little bit. It's so good that I never find myself blaming my equipment really anymore, because it's so clear, it's so smooth that when I miss a shot, it feels horrible because I know it was a skill issue. But hey, that's testament to its performance, isn't it? It also does, I think, make you play a little bit more consistently, since by having equipment that basically melts away and fully immerses you, it kind of just gets out of the way and does not limit your performance, which helps with consistency. Of course, you need to be really good to actually take advantage of that fully, but hey, just reporting on my findings. In terms of motion blur and motion clarity, this thing has DIAC 2, the upgraded version of DIAC Plus that we saw in the XL2566K, a cornerstone feature of any Zowie monitor, and really, you shouldn't buy any Zowie monitor if it does not have DIAC, or at least DIAC Plus, frankly, because it's just really brilliant. If you don't know what it is, it basically strobes the backlight so that it hides when the pixels haven't fully changed color, so that you don't see the blurry frames, so you don't see motion blur, aka motion clarity. If you don't believe that this actually makes an impact, well, I promise you it does. If you turn it off, it looks worse, it's not as clear, it's a lot harder to see movement on the screen as compared to when you turn it on. And this DIAC 2 is actually the key differentiating feature with the 540Hz ASUS PG-248QP that it clearly competes with. They have similar panels from the same supplier, but this monitor has custom circuitry to allow for DIAC 2 to exist. This custom circuitry though might be the reason why Artings reported this monitor having a little slower response time than the PG-248QP. But having used both monitors extensively, I am confident in reporting that you're not going to notice that difference, assuming completely fair circumstances where ULMB2 is off and DIAC 2 is off and you're just using 540Hz panels with no other feature activated. DIAC 2 though has an advantage over the ULMB2 that you find on the ASUS PG-248QP. The 248QP's backlight strobing technology is from NVIDIA, which means you can only use it with NVIDIA RTX 3000 series GPUs and above, which sucks if you use an AMD graphics card. And frankly, this generation AMD graphics cards with the 7800 XT, 7900 XT, and so on have been really good value propositions, great performance, and also have DisplayPort 2.1 and HDMI 2.1. So the fact that you can only use that gaming monitor to its full potential with a NVIDIA graphics card might be a little limiting, and I'm not the biggest fan of that. DIAC 2 is hardware based, which means it won't add any sort of software driver side input lag or latency, and well, you can use any graphics card, even an Intel Arc graphics card, and still take advantage of that beautiful motion clarity. It also has pixel overdrive. I personally set it to high. I think that's what looks best, so some people with their own settings might disagree. If you go too high, it does tend to create a little bit of ghosting, so this was the sweet spot that I found. But there is a quirk about 540Hz. As smooth and as fast and as brilliant as it is, you start to notice a couple of things if your gaming mouse or the rest of your setup isn't up to scratch. When I was using my then daily driver gaming mouse, which was a Zowie U2 that only had a maximum polling rate of 1000 Hz, I actually started to notice an issue with a little bit of stuttering and a little bit of jerking with tracking movements with the mouse. Basically, when I was moving the mouse smoothly across the mouse pad, I started to notice that the cursor or the crosshair would basically move semi-smoothly, occasionally skipping ahead or occasionally stuttering behind. And I'm guessing this is because the mouse can only run at a 1000 Hz polling rate. If you do the math, 540 Hz is more than half of a 1000 Hz polling rate mouse. And what that means is that there is a higher likelihood and probability of the frame being shown on screen not matching up accurately to the input that you just put into the mouse. And that can result in slight frustrations in micro tracking and micro adjustments, especially in applications like AimLab, where you can be consistently running the software at 600-700 FPS. No problem. Now, I initially thought this was just my hand not being smooth, but having swapped over to the Viper V3 Pro that can do 4K and 8K Hz, well, the moment I switched to 4K, the problem was basically instantly gone. So yeah, if you do get such an expensive, fast gaming monitor, you definitely need to be getting a gaming mouse that can match up to it in terms of speed with your 540Hz XL2586X. Do note though that as far as I can tell, this doesn't affect my flicking performance. I personally don't see any issues with using a 1000Hz mouse if you're playing a very, very flick heavy game. To be fair though, this isn't what's limiting my performance. It's really still a skill issue. As for image quality, this panel is not something that you buy for watching movies and AAA titles. We've talked about this, and we will have to talk about this every time we talk about a Zowie gaming monitor. But that is simply because it is a esports focused gaming monitor. It uses a TN panel, and what that means is frankly horrid colors, poor contrast, and poor viewing angles. Do note something about image quality with this gaming monitor. Make sure you use HDMI. I don't think people have emphasized this enough. If you're using this panel, please use HDMI because DisplayPort 1.4a is not enough to support 1080p 540Hz without display stream compression, and that significantly reduces image quality, hurts the contrast, hurts the clarity, hurts the sharpness, so much so that it looks worse than the last gen XL256XK. So if you use this gaming monitor, make sure you're using HDMI 2.1, the ideal port for this panel. By default though, the picture profiles are pretty interesting. The FPS 1 picture profile is what I think is calibrated for Counter-Strike. Its gamma is way too bright, it's a little too saturated and punchy for playing Valorant, but the FPS 2 profile seems to be a good fit for playing Valorant, so just mess around with the profiles and settings until you find what is comfortable, and if you want my settings, comment down below, maybe I'll reply. There is another thing about the viewing angle though, and that is the top-down viewing angle of this monitor not being great, which significantly washes out the elements on the screen when you're looking at the display from a steep top-down angle. As for other things, this panel is, well, classic Zowie brilliance. I mean, as far as attention to detail goes, the stand is improved. It's narrow, it's really, really small. I think that's a big advantage over the Asus. It doesn't take up a massive amount of space on your table. It's more compact than ever, and somehow still as stable as ever, which is just brilliant. As for other things, well, the panel has 3 HDMI ports, a display port which you should not use. It has an improved kind of rear end design. Well, this panel, unlike the PG248QP, does not have a fan, so it won't have a mechanical part that can fail. All in all then, should you buy the XL2586X? Well, we can't answer that question without addressing the elephant in the room, and that is the imminent arrival of OLED QD-OLEDs and their longevity and improvement as well as a lower cost on them. So it does make the XL2586X a harder sell. But we can't really compare this to a product that isn't out yet and is only going to be out in Q4 of this year. That's still 6 months away. Making a purchase decision without considering those panels on the horizon does seem unwise. So should you get this panel? Well, the advantages this panel will have over those cutting-edge OLEDs is number one, there won't be burn-in. Of course, LCD panels still have degradation and they're still gonna look worse after a long period of use. But compared to these new young OLEDs, which only have burn-in warranties for like 3 years, a LCD panel is likely going to last you longer and be more reliable during that period. If you're a professional and you need your hardware to basically be working the moment you sit down at your desk, you can't have the risk of having some burn-in, some image retention issues, or some dead pixels from OLED being bugged out because it's still a relatively young technology in the monitor space. Also, yes, the XL2586X is really expensive, but we can't be confident that the 480Hz OLEDs that have black frame insertion to really be super cheap as well. That plus the fact that you have to wait 6 months for it might mean the XL2586X could make sense for some people. Not to mention the fact that Zowie monitors are basically ubiquitous in the esports scene, which means if you're going to compete at a tournament, chances are you're going to be using a Zowie monitor there. So having a Zowie monitor at home is an advantage because it will get you more comfortable to your competition's hardware. So should you buy it? At the end of the day, this is a panel targeted at esports professionals, for people who don't care about anything else under the sun except having basically the ultimate esports performance with rock solid Zowie reliability. And if you fall into that group of users, this panel is the best that fits that criteria ever made so far. And if you fall into the group of esports enthusiasts or tryhards who are trying to become professional and are already very good, the 2586X could be considered a possibly good investment, especially if you're considering trying to become good enough to make a career out of being good at gaming. As for the casual plebeian who isn't trying to become a world beater, the 2586X was never for you, and that is fine. The new 2546X might be more suitable, or maybe getting a 2566K is also going to be a good choice. But either way, the 2586X is an excellent piece of engineering with a brilliant experience to game on. And frankly, if you get to try it, even at a store, you will see what I mean. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe.